Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tech Time Live. I am Jacob with the BEA Tech Services team, and we also have Rob Rivera and Jonathan Ott, who will also be presenting today. This is one of the parts of our series of the BR3-X. Previously, we did an overview in functions 10 and 11. This is function 22 we're about to be doing. So basically, we're going to be going over what it is, how to program it, how it works, and some wiring and applications. So before we do anything, let's just jump to how to program it. So as a standard, you have these two buttons here, increment and function. Hold them both in for 5 seconds. You see FF00. Hit increment, the left button, until you see 22. Let it sit. You're going to see FF22. And it stopped. Now, that's how you set it to 22. We're not done yet, but I want to go over some of the details of this relay. So function 22 is a 2 relay sequence plus inhibitor. If you remember from functions 10 and 11, all you had were input 1, no wet input, and relay 1. Well, now you have both wet input, all the inputs, relays 1 and 2. So here's what makes this different from functions 10 and 11 as well. You can now use the wet input, a temporary 12 or 24 volt pulse that will come from whether you have a key card or whatever. If you're not using a dry contact device, now you can activate it with wet. Relay 1 can still be chosen between wet and dry. If you want some information on that, you can refer to a previous Tech Time Live. If not, I'll just do a brief summary. There are two jumpers on the side, wet and dry here, these two. These two on the left are for AC or DC. That determines what comes out of relay 1. Dry and wet will determine if that relay is going to output voltage or just be like a switch, dry or voltage. So what we're going to be doing is I have a light which is going to replicate your door, and that's on the background there. A common application is a super scan or a door mounted sensor. On a low energy door, you are not supposed to have it primarily activated by a sensor. You have to wave your hand from wave the open plate or press a regular push plate, and the door will go open. Well, with this, you can inhibit that. Thus, the name 2 relay sequencer plus inhibit. You can inhibit the door mounted sensor, which means that will be locked until the door comes open. Then it's allowed to reactivate your door. Input 4 on the BR3 with function 22. Imagine this is your door position switch. When your door is closed, you want this switch to be closed. When your door starts to go open, now this is open, which allows input 1 to activate. Input 1 is your super scan. And at default, with the door closed, you'll see there's no light in the background. That light's not turning on because it's locking out that super scan. Well, if input 2 from your push plate gets an activation, you'll see that nothing happens. Now, here's why. This is a common error that we see in the field. We did not program your hold time for relays 1, 2, and your delay. So let's go over that. Function. You see H1, 0, 0. Increment it until you see about 0, 2. So that's going to be the hold time for relay 1. Function H2, 0, 0. Hit increment once. Now you have a hold time of 1 second on your second relay. Function D1, that's the delay between relays 1 and 2. Set it to _2, and that's half a second. So it goes in increments of 1/4 second, half, 3/4, and then a full second. Now, to give you a little bit of an understanding of how that delay works, it's not as in, so we set H1 to 2 seconds and H2 to 1. So it's not as in you activate it, relay 1 holds for 2 seconds, you have a half second delay, and then relay 2 fires. It's you activate the door. Relay 1 starts, but half a second immediately after activating, then relay 2 starts. So it doesn't wait for relay 1 to finish. It's a half second from activation is when relay 2 is going to fire. So let's say you have a lock on the door. You activate this, lock holds for 2 seconds, but at immediate activation, a half second later, Now your door is going to open, allowing the lock to have enough time to open. So now that we set a function, let's put that push plate back in input 2. You'll see that we get an activation from the light in the background. But if we put it in 1, nothing. Now, let's say we activate this door, and now since it's opening, so is your door position switch. This is no longer a closed contact when that door is open. Now, it's open. So we're just going to go ahead and take that out now. So with your door currently open, now if I was to put this jumper in, there we go. Let's give it an activation on push plate first, which unlocks the super scan. And now the super scan can work. So once that door goes open, if you saw what I was doing originally, I was putting the jumper inside the super scan slot. Well, that's not going to work until you give it a push plate activation. So push plate, super scan. Door is open. Now your door mounted sensor is no longer inhibited. And that's really the basic functioning of function 22. You want to lock out the activation device until it's really meant to open the door. So that's the 2 relay sequencer plus inhibit. Now we're going to go to Rob with the wiring and some application.
I was going to cover a few of the applications where you would use this, but in saying that, I always like to keep an open mind when it comes to controls and control logic. As Jake was demonstrating, the input 1 can be disengaged, turned off at specific times, and re-engaged to turn on at other times. So in the control world, anytime you need something to turn off, you could use this on multiple things. That's really the application kind of where you open your mind, and it can solve problems for you. On the low energy doors, as we see here on single swing here on the left, you can see the approach side door. When you walk up to it, you don't want that on a low energy door to open, because any sensor that opens a door, it makes that door automatic and fully automatic, ANSI 15610, and so it's no longer low energy, and that's a problem. That's against the ANSI standards. So that really, what you're saying here is with this BR3-X on function 22, you can take a control that only has an activation and perhaps it has a safety, and it doesn't have what we would call a reactivation circuit. So with the function 22, we are creating that reactivation circuit. And the difference between the reactivation circuit and the activation circuit is an activation circuit is what the push button would go to open the door when it's closed. The reactivation circuit only functions when the door is open by the push button, and now it's full, it's opening on its own accord by the auto operator, and when it closes, it's going to prevent the door from hitting that person. It'll reopen, but as soon as the door comes closed, this reactivation circuit turns off. That's what makes it not an activation, but a reactivation circuit. And we use it on many different aspects of things. There are even applications with revolvers where you use those only on the entry on the mouth, where you want the sensor to work at certain times and not at others. And of course, again, on the pairs of doors and the single doors. But I was going to point out one other interesting application that a lot of people, I used it in the past. It was very handy for me. Some of you may know, and that, you know, on a gate, you have an edge. You can see our edge sensor that's clearly pointed out here on the left. That edge sensor, now, when the gate is closed, I'll give you an example. I once had a parking lot that was being vandalized and robbed on a continual basis. They couldn't figure out how they were getting in past the gate because they were taking larger objects. So what they finally found was the edge right here was not being turned off when the gate was in the closed position. So although you couldn't open the gate, you could go up there and hit on the leading edge on that edge, and that would activate the gate to open. So with the function 22 on the BR3-X, it doesn't matter if it's a door sensor, as in the low energy application here, or if it is an edge on the front end, they're both controls, they're both sensors, and we can turn that sensor off using this on a gate edge. And so that makes life a lot easier, and again, this is where you would use this would be older door or gate operators that only have an activation and perhaps an exit loop or a shadow loop and a safety. They don't actually have a cutoff built into the older operators to accommodate an edge sensor in the older ones. The newer ones usually turn off. That being said, just to recap and cover some of the ins and outs of this BR3-X, the wiring is, Jake did an excellent job of just capping off what it includes, but we give you two inputs on IN2 and IN3. Both of them will activate the door, which activates relay 1. And of course, when it activates relay 1, it's going to open and it's going to activate the input 1. So it's going to activate relay 1 to unlock the door, relay 2 if you are using so if you have just an auto door with no lock, a push pull as we call it in the door industry, you could use just relay 1 or just relay 2. But if you're going to use a lock, a panic bar, a mag lock, any type of lock, you use both of these, which Jake again did a great job of explaining. And of course, our door position switch. And one of the things Jake was pointing out that you may have noticed is the door switch, when the door closes, the switch is closed. Once that is a momentary closure. So once it closes, you could actually open the door manually and walk through the door. It's a manual door. The sensor is not going to see you because once the switch is made, it turns off input 1. The only thing that activates input 1 is an activation on IN2 or an activation on IN3 that makes the door open or the gate open. And then your edge would go on IN1 ground, or your door sensor, door mounted sensor would go in IN1. And again, this being a piece of controls for control and networking, you could use this in multiple different applications, but that's what its designed application is. And those are some applications for you that pertain directly to function 22. But I again urge people to keep their eyes and their minds open, because this can be used in multiple applications.
All right, and next up, we're going to go to Jonathan. He's going to show us in the field what function 22 can do. Basically, what you see here is he's walking up to the door, and we have micro scans up there, and they're locked out. They're inhibited from the BR3. And once he gives that activation to the door, now the door came open. Door starts closing. Now, since that home switch was broken, it allowed the micro scan to reopen it so it didn't hit him.
So if you were to use this again on function 22, the installation would be the BR3-X, a door position switch that is closed when the door is closed. And then you're wiring to your strike, you're wiring to your auto door operator, your push buttons. And yes, this will work on with utilizing wireless transmitters. And of course, we do use touchless switches on these as well as activation devices.
Thank you, everyone, for attending this BR3 Tech Time Live. Up next, we're going to be doing the Function 28, which is also a 2-relay sequencer. So if you have any more recommendations for us to do in the future, let us know. Make sure to check out the YouTube channel to see all of these if you missed any in the past. And enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for watching.